Yes, Mataji.
Okay. Let us just give it just maybe 1 minute more or something.
Okay.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tadho Jayam Udirayet. Shinvatam Swakatha Krishna Punyashravana Kirtana Hridyantastohya Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhritsatam Nastyaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Om Atnana Timirandhasya Nananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkripatvamaham Vande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. The volume is okay, my computer. Lingaraju Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji. Can you hear me, Mataji?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Volume is.
Okay, good. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 15, verse 39. Madhurayam tadha vajram shurasenapatim tadha prajapatyam nirupyeshtim agnim abhibadishwara. Madhurayam tadha vajram shurasenapatim tadha prajapatyam nirupyeshtim agnim abhibadishwara. Madhurayam at Madhura tadha also Vajra, Shurasena Patim, king of the Shurasenas. Tadha, thereafter, Prajapatya sacrifice. Nirupya, having performed, Ishtim, gold, Agnin, fire, Apibat, placed in himself, Ishvara, capable. Then he posted Vajra, the son of Aniruddha, grandson of Lord Krishna, at Mathura as the king of Surasena. Afterwards, Maharaj Yudhishthira performed a Prajapatya sacrifice and placed in himself the fire for quitting household life. Maharaj Yudhishthira, after placing Maharaj Parikshit on the imperial throne of Hastinapura, and after posting Vajra, the grandson of Lord Krishna, as the king of Mathura, accepted the renounced order of life. The system of 4 orders of life and 4 castes in terms of quality and work, known as varnasrama dharma, is the beginning of real human life. And Maharaj Yudhishthira, as the protector of this system of human activities, timely retired from active life as a sannyasi, handing over the charge of the administration to a trained prince, Maharaj Parikshit. The scientific system of Varnashrama Dharma divides the human life into 4 divisions of occupation and 4 orders of life. The 4 orders of life as Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasi are to be followed by all, irrespective of the occupational division. Modern politicians do not wish to retire from active life, even if they are old enough. But Yudhishthira Maharaj, as an ideal king, voluntarily retired from active administrative life to prepare himself for the next life. Everyone's life must be so arranged that the last stage of life, say at least The last 15 to 20 years prior to death can be absolutely devoted to the devotional service of the Lord to attain the highest perfection of life. It is really foolishness to engage oneself all the days of one's life in material enjoyment and fruitive activities, because as long as the mind remains absorbed in fruitive work for material enjoyment, there is no chance of getting out from conditioned life or material bondage. No one should follow the suicidal policy of neglecting one's supreme task of attaining the highest perfection of life, namely going back to Godhead, going back home, back to Godhead. ओमज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. So we are reading from the chapter that the Pandavas are retiring in a timely fashion. Other devotees have completed the section dealing with how Arjuna processed Krishna's departure, eventually came to the point of completely remembering Krishna's instructions, and he attained peace. And similarly, now Yudhishthira Maharaj is about to retire. And the previous verse was about how he enthroned Parikshit Maharaj as the emperor. And this verse is about Vajra, otherwise sometimes known as Vajranabha, who is the grandson of Krishna, and he was enthroned at Madhura as the king. And then it is said that Maharaj Parikshit performed this Prajapatya sacrifice, placing the fire for quitting household life in himself. So by the time, and when that time came, Maharaj Yudhishthira was completely he has completed all his worldly duties, and he was ready to take up full renounced order of life. And I was hearing one of Srila Prabhupada's classes, and Prabhupada was speaking that every human being, no matter what class or what qualification one have, whichever class one belongs to, one has to come to that place. So that is what Maharaj Yudhishthira, after installing Parikshit Maharaj as emperor, and afterwards installing Vajra as the king of Madhura, Yudhishthira Maharaj, he placed, he was he came to the position of a completely renounced personality. And so in his lecture, Srila Prabhupada was speaking that how Kurus and Yadus were very closely interlinked through marriage and so many other relationships. For example, Arjuna was married to Krishna's sister, Subhadra. Queen Kunti was married to Pandu. Like that, both the Kurus and Yadus, they had wonderful relationships, and they were very closely connected. And yet, when we hear about the life of all the Pandavas and also of Queen Kunti, we can see what exalted devotees they were, because they didn't keep that attachments, even though they had the best of relationships in their life. They did not keep those worldly attachments as the most prominent thing in their life, because by the end of their life, they came to the position of complete detachment. So the Vedic system, this varnasrama dharma, accepting the institution of varna and ashrama, the social and spiritual orders, this is an integral part of our Vedic system. And Prabhupada was speaking that Aryan, the word Aryan, it means one who makes progress under varnashrama dharma. And when Maharaji, the question comes like, why should Maharaji Yudhishthira retire from his position? Because he had everything and he was enthroned as the emperor. And so there is no reason for, if it was like any worldly people, they would never like to let go of their position. And yet Maharaji Yudhishthira, he, without any kind of a hesitation, his mind was fully fixed upon Krishna, and there was no more attachment at that point. So Prabhupada was referring in his purport that after 50 years of life, one must retire and one should lead a detached way of life. So in the purport, Prabhupada is saying, not only Yudhishthira Maharaj took sannyas. Now, what is the meaning of sannyas? Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter, the first verse, there is this verse, anashrita karma phalam. In the purport of this verse, Prabhupada is saying, the living entity who acts for the satisfaction of the supreme whole and not for personal satisfaction is the perfect sannyasi and a perfect yogi. So sannyasi means one who renounces all worldly connections, ultimately only for the satisfaction of the Supreme. There is no more worldly attachments, but it's only Krishna, ultimate shelter. That is a sannyasi. And Prabhupada writes in the purport that not only Maharaj Yudhishthira, but all his brothers, all of them, they became sannyasis. So the ultimate, they all realized this ultimate dharma of all the living entities, which is Savai Pumsham Paro Dharmo Yadho Bhaktir Adokshaje. They came to that position of understanding, and so they very happily retired. So we all know that we are not this body, and we are the spirit souls, and we are encased in this body. In other words, we accepted this body. So there is a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto. It says, Edavat Nana Edavat Janma Saphalyam Dehinamiha Dehishu Pranair Arthair Dhiya Vacha Shreya Acharanam Sada. So in any case, we have accepted this Dehi. And then what do? So you engage that body in Krishna's service. And so this is where the varnasrama system, it comes into the picture. And so today what I thought of doing was just to speak a little bit about Krishna's grandson Vajra, and then see what that varnasrama dharma really is, and how Krishna's varnasrama dharma is so unique. Does this world, in this world, is there any semblance of that varnasrama dharma existing? And if it does exist, how does it differ from Krishna's system of varnasrama dharma? And then we can see what Maharaj Yudhishthira was doing and how everything connects. I don't know if I can finish that, but I will give it a try. So Vajra was Krishna's great grandson. So when Krishna was married to Rukmini, and Rukmini's first son was Pradyumna, and Pradyumna's son was Aniruddha. Pradyumna was married to his uncle's daughter, Rukmavati, and Aniruddha was married to Usha, who is the daughter of Banasura. And then Aniruddha's son was Vajra, otherwise also known as Vajranabha, and his son was Pratibahu. Maharaj has named one of our devotees here as Pratibahu. So that is the lineage. And the history is that when after Kurukshetra war, 26 years or so later, all the Yadus were killed, and Vajranabha was the one unique Yadu who survived, along with a number of other queens of the Yadus. And the Yadu dynasty was so huge that there were hundreds of thousands or millions of people in there, because it is stated somewhere Krishna had like 18 Maharatha sons, and all of them were so skilled in so many arts, and all of them were killed, but Vajra was spared. And Arjuna went to Dwaraka to rescue those who are remaining, and he brought Vajra with him. By that time, Yudhishthira Yudhishthira Maharaj had already enthroned Maharaja Parikshit as the emperor, and there Arjuna proclaimed Vajra to be the king of Mathura. So then, after Vajra was enthroned as the king in Mathura, then by the time Pandavas had already left for the Himalayas, and Arjuna's grandson Parikshit, who was already emperor, he visited Vajra in Mathura. The reason is because these two families, the Kurus and Yadus, they were so interconnected, as Prabhupada was speaking, that they had such intimate relationships. And Parikshit Maharaj visited Vajranabha, and Vajranabha received Parikshit Maharaj with great respect. And Parikshit was, the visit was, the purpose was just to inquire from him how everything is going and if there is anything that he can do. And Vajranabha said to Parikshit that everything is fine except I don't see any people here in Mathura. I have no idea where all of them have gone. And so, what is a kingdom without having the people? And so, immediately to address this issue, Parikshit Maharaj called a great saint by the name Sandhilya, who happened to be the family priest. And Sandhilya explained this to Vajra, that what he said was about the glory of Vrindavan or Braja. The glory of Vrindavan is that Krishna was there and he performed all his pastimes in various places. And Sandhilya said that you needed to restore the glory of Vrindavan and the places where Krishna has performed his pastimes, bringing back to life that same energy when Krishna was here, for which you needed to make the deities of Krishna and you have to install them, worship them, thereby bringing in that same energy which Krishna was here, and once again restore this place, because this meaning of the meaning of the name Braj, it means it is omnipresent and all pervading. There is no destruction for this land, so you got to do that. So both Parikshit Maharaj and Vajra were very happy hearing from Sandilya, and after that Vajra started carving the deities of Krishna. It is stated that about 16 deities were made and installed in various places in Mathura. And some of the famous deities, each deity has their own history. One of them is Haridev of Govardhan. You will hear a lot about this deity in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Then there is the Keshavadev of Mathura, Baladev of Baladio, and then Govindaji of Vrindavan. We know Govindaji, original deity, is no longer there. And there were two Nathjis, which is Sri Nathji, which is in Rajasthan, Nathadwar. And then there is Gopinath, who has moved to Jaipur. And then we have Madan Mohan and Sakshi Gopal. Madan Mohan went to Karoli, and Sakshi Gopal moved to Orissa in course of time, which was close towards Puri. And like this, so these deities carved at that time were extraordinary. And actually, Vajra had never seen Krishna because he is a great grandson. But Uttara, Parikshit Maharaj's mother, she had seen Krishna, and hearing her description, they made the deities. And none of the deities resembled Krishna completely. And it is stated that Govindaji, his face resembled that of Krishna. And then there was Madan Mohan, whose navel, from navel to the feet, he resembled Krishna. And then the third deity was Gopinath, from navel up to the neck, he resembled Krishna. So these three deities became very, very important. We all know that they are such important deities in Vrindavan. So this is how Vajranabha once again reinstituted everything, reestablished the temples in Vrindavan. So that brings us to back to Maharaja Parikshit and this Varnashrama, Krishna's unique system of Varnashrama. And so Varnashrama, it is actually, it's a blueprint for a spiritual civilization. A spiritual civilization, there is a necessity for following Varnashrama. Prabhupada, when he was alive, he wanted this to be established in our society. And, it's not a simple thing at all, but there is a reason for that. So if a society want to attain or secure for its members the highest or the highest good for all of its members, it must arrange all of them. All of them should be enlightened regarding the science of the self. And so one has to get that education that we are spirit souls, not this body. And then how do we act based on that understanding? But this whole Varnashrama system is ultimately based upon this spiritual understanding about the science of the soul. But if you ask to a materialistic person, this is what the backbone of our society, and this is the Vedic culture. They will say that what are you talking about? Because the soul, it is not perceivable. It is just a metaphysical concept. So you are building a whole system based upon something which you cannot experience. But the fact is that any experience that we have in this world is because of the fact that we have a soul. And if you don't have a soul, then there is no experience at all. So there is no validity for such an argument. So we are all primarily, we are spiritual beings. And Varnashrama Dharma, it's so unique that it somehow it integrates, it reconciles the absolute equality of all the people on spiritual platform, and also there are relative inequalities, because relative inequalities come because we are covered. Each one, we have an upadhi, so each one has a quality. And so because the spirit soul accepted this material body, we have these coverings and upadhis, and therefore there is inequalities. And that is the nature of the material world. Spiritual beings covered in material covering. And so how do you reconcile these two things? And Krishna established this system of Varnashrama for the reconciliation of these. So we have these 4 occupational groups, and then we have these 4 spiritual orders. And Krishna says, Chaturvarnyam Maya Srishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasa. And he created this system, and it is based on Guna and Karma. It is not the same system what we call as caste system, because the caste system is just it is a culture where somebody with a higher power, they dominate over those who are not in that category. And that is a system where there is like an exploitation. It is based upon birth, saying that I'm born in a Brahminical family or I'm born in a low caste family. That is not Krishna's Varnashrama system. So we all know that Brahmanas are the intellectuals, and Brahmanas are, they know the absolute truth by theoretical knowledge and also by their own direct realization. So because they know, because by their practice, because of their purity, because they understand what the absolute truth is, then naturally they are teachers and they impart this knowledge to the members of the society. That is their role. So in a proper system, the Brahmanas who are pure-hearted, they impart this knowledge to all the others, whether it is Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, or Shudras. Kshatriyas also, they are intelligent class of people, but their intelligence is slightly different. Kshatriya intelligence is more of a practical kind of intelligence, because they have this duty of sometimes protecting the citizens. They are very courageous, and they are very generous, they are very spontaneous, and they have different qualities, but their intelligence also, it is a different type of intelligence than that of Brahminical intelligence, yet the Kshatriyas need to be guided by the Brahmanas. And then Vaishyas, as we know, they are buying and selling. Their occupation is farming, trade, cow protection, and all those things. But they also must be intelligent, but their intelligence is another type because it is more narrower than that of the Kshatriyas. So it is understood that the heroism is the factor that impels a Kshatriya to act. Whereas in the case of a Vaishya, profit making, that impels a Vaishya to act. And so then, of course, there is the Shudras who are not really, not that very intelligent, and as a result, those who are intelligent guides them. So now we'll get to the point of exploitation when somebody is more intelligent, more powerful, how it leads to exploitation and how that thing is avoided in our Daivi Varnasrama system. So as just we were talking about the differences and non-differences. Everybody is a spirit soul, that is the uniform platform, but the difference comes from the coverings that is there on our body. So based upon the nature of the bodies that we have acquired and based upon our inclinations, each living entity has got their own duty to perform, and that is called as swadharma, their own duty. Now, each varna, it requires its own particular type of duties. And it is really foolish to think that if we will all have like a uniform type of duty, it doesn't work, because we can very clearly see that even just by looking at people, you can say that everybody is different in nature. And so the same uniform duties does not work for all. So naturally, it calls for diversity. And so our Varnashrama system, which is given to us by Krishna, it accommodates all these needs that exist. And it is essential in any community that we need people belonging to all these categories. It cannot be like a community can exist only just with the Brahmanas, only with the Kshatriyas, or only with Vaishyas or Shudras. So then if the higher groups or highly intelligent class of people, Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, if they are the ones who have to guide Shudras or Vaishyas, wouldn't that lead to exploitation? But to prevent that only is the knowledge that the Brahminical culture they have acquired regarding the nature of the spirit soul, its relationship with the Supreme. It is such a highly elevated consciousness that in the Vedic system, they recognize that whether you are a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, everybody is, the purpose of their life is savai pumsham paro dharmo yado bhaktir adokshaje. So everybody has to serve the Supreme Lord. Everyone is subordinated to the Supreme Lord. So you may be guiding some people, but you don't consider yourself as somebody superior. So on the platform of the soul, on the platform of this understanding that everyone here, we have accepted this body, the purpose of the body is to serve the Supreme. So that is what is called Sanatana Dharma. So even though everybody has a Swadharma, and because we have the Sanatana Dharma on that platform, this problem of exploitation does not take place. So there is no injustice, there is no conflict. That's how it is supposed to be. Now, since lack of time, I will just jump to a comparison. We can think whether is there any such system in existence in our current day world, or other than Krishna teaching us in the Bhagavad Gita, any society, did they ever pick up this system of Varnashrama? And if we study the history, we can see that in medieval Europe, in European history, you can see there is some semblance of varnasrama existed. And that is the kings at that time, they were called the feudalistic kings. They also had the priestly class of people. And there were Vaishyas and there were Shudras. So this is the structure of medieval Europe. And those priests at that time, they guided the kings. So it is the priest who ordained the kings and the priest who guided the kings. And the kings were supposed to be, um, um, they were supposed to worship God. And a time came, I mean, of course, in this system, it ended up in a total failure because a time came when the priestly class got corrupted because their level of understanding was totally different from what you see in the Vedic culture. The priestly class became ambitious and they became self centered and they became so oppressive that the kings, who are the Kshatriyas, they started not paying attention to guidance coming from there. They overrided all the guidances because the priestly class themselves, their standard declined. And then, as a result of that, the kings became kind of arrogant and they started treating the next level of people, Vaishyas, with disrespect. And they treated it, and then it cascaded down, and the working class people were treated really bad. So you can see there is different type of revolutions happen, something called Protestant Reformation. That was happening when the Kshatriyas disobeyed the guidance coming from the Brahmanas, or let us say the priest. And then in course of time, when the Vaishyas got exploited, French Revolution came. And in course of time, when the Shudras, or the working class people, were ill-treated to an extreme extent, they rebelled against, and then that resulted in this communist revolution, we can say like that. And the communists, the purpose of them, why did they do all this, was they were telling that now everybody is equal and we are going to distribute wealth equally. And so because of that, they wanted to bring, the best to the human society. That was their goal, but that also backfired because even within the communistic system, there were people became very thirsty after power, and there are a handful of people, they took charge and they started treating ordinary people in a worst possible manner than that we could ever imagine. So it was like ultimately the society, it took about 500 years in the European history for this feudalistic society to come down in this path. And the society ended up in progressive stages of decay. And even to this day, we see people belonging to the extreme left or extreme right, and problems caused by that. And all of those problems came into existence. This is like we are living through these kind of time periods. This is our history. We are living through a time period where, from the so-called worldly varnasrama, where there is no, it was not fully God-centered because the Brahminical culture or the priestly people, they did not fully understand what it is to be, what it is to be a spiritually realized person. And because they don't have like that supreme personality in the center of their life, because they became polluted, as a result, it just cascaded down, came to this present day situation where there is no God in the center. And this is why Prabhupada was, I noted it down somewhere. Prabhupada said that, what did he say? Yeah, he said this Krishna consciousness movement, it is re-spiritualization of human society and purity of Brahminical culture. It is the foundation of varnasrama dharma. So that's really something we have to pay very close attention to. The Brahminical culture is the foundation of this system set up by Krishna. So Prabhupada mentioned about it in many of his classes. And so since our current society is at a lowest point of decay or degradation, there is nothing within that structure enough to nurture us, because in the current this kind of political systems and all those, they don't have the value that we see which in the system that was given to us by Krishna. So because this is already a degraded situation, no guidance is going to come from within. The guidance has to come from outside. And that's what Srila Prabhupada was talking about. So in one of his purports, Prabhupada says, this is a life-giving movement of human society. This is a life-giving movement of human society. This is the beauty of Prabhupada's purport. He means so much in one of his sentences. Why it is a life-giving movement? Because it recognizes that all of us are individuals. Each one has got everybody has got their swadharma to perform. Everybody has got a role to enact, and yet we are spirit souls. We are same on the spiritual platform. From Sanatana Dharma point of view, everybody is the same, but from our guna and karma, it is so different that there is variety, and that variety, we recognize that variety. We want that variety because otherwise society does not exist, and yet we can never afford to forget that we are all part and parcel of Krishna, and we have to serve Krishna ultimately, just like how Maharaj Yudhishthira left at the end of his life. The particular sacrifice that he performed, so that he had no more material attachment, no connection whatsoever. After putting Maharaja Parikshit as emperor, and after enthroning Vajra as the king of Mathura, he didn't even look back. He didn't even look back at his brothers or wife or anyone. He just kept going, and his brothers also followed it. This is the greatest example set by Yudhishthira Maharaj, which is actually the following the system of Varnashrama Dharma, which is given to us by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we need the purity that is available to the Brahmanas in our Vedic system. It was not available to the people of the European culture, like the feudalistic society, the priests. They did not have that purity because they did not have this knowledge, Sanatana Dharma. So this is where we can see that in the worldly perspective, whatever it is that people have done in the history, when you look at it, it has collapsed everything. Whatever they tried to build, it didn't succeed, and we are seeing it in our lifetime. And Prabhupada is saying the purity that is available in the Vedic system, it was not available to the medieval Brahmanas, and this is a huge difference. And also. So we have no other alternative at this point of time than to follow this Vedic system, because the current society or current system of government or anything, they are not going to guide us properly because they don't understand this particular principle. So with that, I think I'm going to stop here. I took extra time. There was a lot more to be said about it. I'm not any expert in Varnashrama and all that, but it was so wonderful just reading how Maharaj Yudhishthira came to that point at the end of his life, and why Prabhupada's teaching is so relevant to each and every one of us, because we can see the beauty of Krishna's um, I read somewhere the Krishna's system. It is called Krishna's occupational therapy. I read like that, and so Krishna's occupational therapy is, the best. What he has given to us is the best, and where we are living in this society, it is not available. So what Prabhupada has given to us is that in his purports and in his writings, and we have examples like Maharaj Yudhishthira, who has literally lived their life, and we can read it in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, how it was done, and we can look up to such personalities, and we can thank Prabhupada and Krishna that they are kind enough to at least show us the pathway, show us the reality. Every single thing that Krishna teaches, it is, or the teachings of Krishna, or the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, it speaks volumes for anyone who wants to make even a tiny little bit of progress. With that, I will stop. Hare Krishna. Sorry that I took a little extra time, but the topic is a little bit elaborate. If anybody has any comments, questions, or add something, that will be great.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. Mataji, it was really wonderful listening to you. I did not realize that you had gone beyond the time. So, what really interested me was you talking about medieval Europe. I'm actually reading a book which goes even before medieval Europe, like Roman Empire and earlier than that. And what I read is, they, particularly Greeks and Romans, used to follow a religion which was very similar to what we follow from Sanatana Dharma, almost very similar deities. Culturally they name it differently and all those things. And all of that was destroyed later. And like you said, it all got corrupted. But anyway, thank you for this wonderful, lecture, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I was reading what captured. I mean, we read all the time, and many times we don't see things until we read it, many more times. And so, what captured my attention was that, in this world also, people did recognize the need for some sort of some semblance of varnasrama, because without without people recognized people do have different type of qualities, and there is differences among people, and so various categories of people, and so naturally these societies, they did try to do something about it, but the fact that their priestly class got contaminated, and that resulted in the fall of everything that they were trying to accomplish. And that teaches us that how purity is of such an importance, and it's not such an easy thing. We have to, how deeply we have to understand that the purity of Brahminical culture is the key to success in spiritual life as well as in material existence. That is something which struck me so much. Thank you. Anybody else have anything to say?
Krishna Mataji.
Yeah.
Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Prabhupada. Thank you, Mataji. I think for me, two inspirations. One is when you shared about how this is like all spirit souls are at a Sanatana Dharma level. We're all the same.
Yeah.
But then we have, and so we need to also act according to psychosexual nature.
Yeah.
And not compete for equality at that level.
No.
But qualify ourselves to be in service in whatever backgrounds and psychosocial nature we may have. So that's one inspiration. And the second one is about purity of the brahmanas. that part is I'm feeling that I want to work on it for myself. It seems it's like a big responsibility, especially if we have taken some, like second initiation and the step towards this culture. It becomes a greater responsibility. So
Yeah.
I want to learn more and be connected to the principles. So even if I slip sometime, I want to come back right away. So I'm just trying to seek everybody's blessings and just wanted to share this inspiration.
Yes, absolutely. I also feel that way because the varnasrama dharma, it is integrating and it is what is it called? It reconciles the absolute equality of all people. And that absolute equality of all people is that we are spiritual beings. It is recognizing that. And it also recognizes there is relative inequalities. And these inequalities are imposed upon us because we have this covering conditional existence, and we have the upadhis which cover. And so we have to, we know each one of us is different. So there should be, because having understood Krishna's varnashrama system based upon guna and karma, while accepting that we are all individual beings with our own personality types, and we have this physical body, which whatever reason we accepted this, now, we have to consciously remind ourselves that how do we act with this? Like, we call ourselves Brahmanas or whatever, second initiated and all this. But, every single time when the lower modes overpower, or when we are in our interactions with each other, how important it is for us to remind ourselves that this so-called second initiation and all that, it is not like somebody is giving us some title. It is not about that at all. While we have our limitations because of our own nature, some of us have Kshatriya nature, some of us have Vaishya nature, these things will come. But, the purity of Brahminical culture has to be preserved. We should have the ability to see when we slip consciously, we needed to remind ourselves, we are slipping from that position. And how do we once again try to reinstate? Otherwise, what is the difference between us and these medieval people in Europe, from where everything, cascaded down? Because they lost that, what you call it as that, the integration between that understanding of we are spiritual beings covered in this material body. They didn't have that. Fortunately, we have that. So when Prabhupada is saying that, we cannot find anything in this degraded, putrefied situation, we have to create this outside of the worldly situation, where we are living in an environment where we have nothing to look upon here other than, Krishna's instructions in Bhagavad Gita. And once again, remind ourselves that this is what is given to us. So I may falter, I may lose my control, or I may, because of my, what to call it as, because of my inabilities, I may fall down sometimes. But let me remind myself that I'm not here to rule over somebody else. That's not my position at all. Because, no matter who you are, everybody is same on the spiritual platform. Let us remind that. And then how do you function with that proper understanding that every single time, then again there is a recalibration. And imagine if the whole group of devotees, then everybody is recalibrating, everybody is recalibrating every step of the way, then there is progress. if we don't recalibrate, there is nobody else is going to come and tell us. It has to happen within each individual. We will fail sometimes because we are ordinary human beings. But this is the huge difference between the world out there and the world in the life of devotion for anybody. This is a huge difference. If we take home this one tiny little message about it's our own duty to remind ourselves that everybody is equal on the spiritual platform, and we are functioning here. We are doing various services, sometimes in the name of services too. There is so much of possessiveness, and in the name of service also sometimes we think that, okay, whatever it is that we are doing, this is the most important thing, and then we completely forget, we cannot get ourselves to be absorbed in the modes, when the modes are operating, just not even paying attention to that, particularly in our services. This is something, Prabhupada's teaching, this is Krishna's teaching, and this is for our own welfare and well-being. And we are learning it looking at the outside society, how degraded it has become. Extreme rights, extreme left political situations. We don't want that in our life. So it was very interesting to read and compare about these things. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Unless if anybody has anything to add. Lingaraju Prabhu.
Yes.
Okay. Going once, going twice, and going thrice. I think we will stop it.
Thank you so much, Mataji.
Thank you so very much. Hare Krishna. How do I get out of this?